Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Brandon Shank, and welcome to the Brandon Shank Podcast. Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Brandon Shank Podcast. Excited to be with y'all. We got a lot on the docket, a lot to cover today. I'm excited about it. I'm pumped. It wouldn't be the show without my homeboy, my right hand. Give it up for Corey in the corner. What's up, Corey?
What's up, everybody? I'm back in the corner, as always. That's going to be my tagline every week.
I'm back in the corner.
Baby's back in the corner. Here I am.
Oh, man. Hey, I want to thank everybody who has really made this a great success. What started out as a project for my doctorate has turned into a phenomenon of small sorts. But it's been great, man. I just want to thank everybody who's listened. I do have some friends that have said, yeah, man, I need to listen to that. And I'm thinking, man, come on, we're 2 weeks in. Show me some support. But I realize they're not podcasters. And so there's a big generation of podcasters that I've heard from that. I just appreciate y'all listening. And somebody actually said this week, like, man, I can't wait every week for it to come out. They said, I'm actually thinking, oh, man, is it Wednesday yet? And that's how I know it's a true follower, because they know we come out on Wednesdays, even though we advertise on Thursdays. Usually it's Wednesday afternoons that it actually drops, and then Thursday is kind of our big push for
those early people. Yeah, they know.
The true ones, man.
I know, right?
But, all of you that are a little slower on it, or some of you that claim to be my friends, family, or share the same bloodline, I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. Just going to believe that we all have a good heart. You know what I'm saying? But, hey, a fun fact. Yesterday, President Joe Biden was here in Virginia Beach. And for all of us here, it was chaos because nobody could drive anywhere for days because of traffic. They shut down 3/4 of the city, and everybody was stuck. Man, people in Virginia Beach, they're not feeling the traffic. Yesterday, I left here. It probably took me a little over an hour to get home. I live like 20 minutes from here. Yeah. And there's people slamming on brakes in front of each other, honking horns. They were so mad and irritated, they're just ready to get home. And I was thinking, bro, welcome to D.C. I grew up in D.C. traffic. I lived 7 miles from my school in elementary, and we left at 7. I think 7 every morning. School started at 8:30, and I can't tell you the amount of times it took us more than 90 minutes to go 7 miles in D.C. or right outside of D.C. So it was like, I don't like it. But I can tell you the tolerance and threshold of people in Virginia Beach for traffic, not big, not high at all. The traffic is nothing here. And so we're grateful for that. But, in the whole phenomenon of the day, we were talking about some president likes McDonald's. And Corey in the corner said, I think that was Bill Clinton that used to go to McDonald's. And I said, man, I thought Donald Trump was the one who was always getting McDonald's delivered to his plane.
It's probably, it's both.
But it brought up something bigger. It brought up a bigger issue that we need to address, is that both Corey and Buddy have said they've never had a Big Mac. I mean, it's one thing to have one person that's never said they have a Big Mac, but two, it's odd. That's odd to me. So I told him in advance, I wish I hadn't said anything to him, because I feel like he had a whole evening to prepare a rundown of what's going to make sense. But if you've lived in this country or anywhere in the world and never had a Big Mac, I do question. I don't know. There's a lot about a person, I wonder. I mean, how do you avoid it is more of a big question.
So basically, it doesn't really take me that long to defend. The patties themselves.
I'm not saying it's good. Listen, nobody's arguing that it's good. Everybody's arguing that it's childhood, man.
The patties themselves just look disgusting.
Lettuce,
basically.
sauce. What is it?
Well, I don't eat lettuce. You know that. I have a weird
gag reflex.
This is why I'm in the corner. I have a weird
2 buns, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Come on, man.
But here's the even more extreme thing. I don't think it is a
sesame seed bun. Yeah, it is.
The more extreme thing is it's been just since like the last year or maybe 2 years of my life that I've even started eating fast food burgers. Like never had them. I eat burgers at home, but fast food burgers, I don't know. There's just something about them that I was just a chicken guy.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just amazed that you 34?
36.
36. You're 36 years of living on this earth, that not once have you been extremely inconvenienced, in a hurry for a meal, and had to stop somewhere, or been on a road trip where there was no restaurant around, but there was a McDonald's in the middle of Indiana in the pitch dark of night. I may be speaking from experience. And at that point, you had a Big Mac. It's just hard for me to believe that I'm more impressed that you've avoided it your entire life. The avoided eating a Big Mac. It's impressive to me. I don't know how it's possible.
It's chicken nuggets all day.
I just don't know how it's possible.
I don't know where my chicken nugget people are, but it's chicken nuggets all day.
I like chicken nuggets. I just don't know how you've avoided eating one ever. It's a phenomenon to me. Like BP, the guy who works with us, never had coffee. Are you kidding me?
That's weird. He's
accidentally sipped it from his wife.
Let's spend more time talking about how weird that is.
No, we don't need to go that. It just is weird. So, hey, if you guys have any hate mail that you'd like to send for Corey and Buddy, go ahead. I get it. You don't have to. I mean, nothing too harsh, but maybe just an upside, maybe just a thumbs down, whatever it is. But also something interesting yesterday that took place. The Orioles and the Pirates, they were in a minor league game, or not a minor league game, a spring training game. And everybody knows spring training is all about seeing the players that are going to make the last 2 or 3 roster spots on a team. Well, both of the managers had decided the Orioles wanted to see a pitcher. Well, the game was over in the middle of the night, and the umpires leave, and so the game goes on. The managers are like, you know what? I need to see this pitcher. The Pirates manager is like, well, I'll let my guys hit again. And so they played the bottom half of the 9th with no umpires. There's nobody calling ball. These are pro baseball players. Nobody calling ball and strikes. Nobody in the field to call outs.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and so it was funny to watch because you realize it's spring training. The managers just want to see what it looks like. But the bigger part for me, I felt like it was a glimpse into the future. This is what baseball is going to look like in 30 years. There's not going to be a physical umpire on the field. There will be umpires monitoring robotics or some type of surveillance that every call will be exact and precise, including balls and strikes, including cameras, sensors, whatever they use.
Yeah.
But to me, it was funny because the field looked very clean, and not having them there, I felt like it was a technological prophetic picture of what the future of baseball is going to look like.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what I took from it.
That's very interesting.
I was like, man, the field looks super clean. And I thought, man, this is probably, everybody said, well, you don't want to do away with umpires. The human, the human back and forth of umpires is what makes sports great. And, refs and all that. There's always controversy. They'll still be, I think the way they have it is there's still going to be umpires monitoring the technology. Or the technology will tell them whether or not it's a ball or strike, and they'll still be behind the plate. I know there's different adjustments and things they've done in the minors, but I don't know. It was just one of those things for me yesterday. I was like, man, this is a telling example of what I think the future could look like in sports. All sports, really. I think it's a matter of time. You know what I'm saying? So, good. All right, well, hey, you guys know what time it is. You asked for it.
Uh-oh, here
Let's
we go.
hit it, baby.
We got a jingle.
Let's
here
hit
we
it.
Go.
Let's hit it. You asked for it.
Don't blame me. You asked for it.
All right, you asked for it. Hey, if you want us to answer some of your questions, send them in. Go to the direct message on Facebook or on Instagram. Just go to Brandon Shank. Let us know. Send us a message. Or you can always go online. You can email us. You can go to info@palmschurchonline or admin@palmschurchonline. We're actually in the process of building a website here in the next couple of months that'll be up to support this podcast. But for now, you can send it to those if you're not on social. But you asked for it, so here's a couple of questions. The first one is, what's your shoulder workout? Thank you, first of all, Derek from West Virginia for asking. I appreciate the question. It's called 4 Children, lots of lifting. A lot of, I guess back in the day it was CrossFit. As I get older, it's as much as I can do to try to stay fit, work out a couple days a week. Baseball coach. These are just all natural. These are Shank Dynasty, born and bred, baby.
Farm strength.
Farm strength. I encourage everybody, get you a good workout regimen. Get in the gym, get physical. As you get older, everything hurts more. But yeah, man, just keep going at it. Keep going at it. Everybody out there, just do it. I believe in you. Go get that shoulder workout on. Let it burn, baby. Let it burn. The next question is from Abby here in Virginia Beach. And her question is, as a Christian, how do you navigate politics and faith? I feel the need to be involved in the events and situations going on to the extent of at least voting. And I would agree, Abby, we all have a responsibility to vote. We need to vote. It says, but I feel like the choices in regards to politics don't match my convictions as a follower of Christ. Should we be involved in politics? So I'm going to let Corey in the corner take this one.
Oh, God.
So the thing is, there's really 2 sides to this. Two answers I'll give. The first is there's never going to be a candidate or a side that's going to fully support every value you have as a Christian. There are things in different spheres of the political candidacy that you may support There are different things that candidates will support. You're like, man, I really like that. I really like that. I really like that. There are some moral things that you may say, this is my moral compass that I feel like is absolute, my number one. And then the problem with politics is a lot of times we vote on candidates. We don't vote on policy as much. We say, well, I really like this person. I like what they stand for. I don't agree with everything, but I believe in them more. So that's where politics, I think, gets sticky, is because it's not morals anymore as much as it is candidates. You know, you might have a candidate that supports a moral, but you think that person as a whole is not as moral as this candidate who doesn't support that moral. And so it really, over time, I think politics have gone even more gray to where you wonder, no matter who you vote for, what's really changing. And that's not a political statement. I think that's a fair assessment of a lot of things take a lot of time to get moving at a governmental level. There's a lot of things that, you know, different houses and Congress and there's things that has to go through. And so for me personally, I vote based on morals. I vote based on the things that I feel are important. And I understand that when you take a particular issue, like let's talk about abortion. This is the big conservative issue that people say I absolutely vote on. Well, the people on the other side of that argument may say, well, you're voting on abortion, but I'm actually voting on women's rights, which I think is more of an answer to abortion than not allowing abortion. And there's arguments on both sides of that. The reality is, as a Christian, I'm not just trying to protect the lives of the babies. I want to protect the moms. I don't think I know what's best for every person, but I know God does. And so my goal is always, how can we take care of these people that are hurting, that are in pain? Some people say, I just made a mistake. I want to get rid of this baby. It doesn't work like that. That's just not reality. No matter who you are, you can shove down emotions and feelings, but there's more to it than that. So I think that's a political thing or an issue that can cause a lot of, you know, exchange between people that do love the Lord and people that do love God and have a very strong opinion on abortion. Doesn't mean that one's entirely wrong. Scripture supports that we are to love and that we are to care for. Do I think it's in the best interest of any baby to not have a choice? No. Well, that's a living being. You say, well, the mom has a choice. Well, the baby's a living being the moment it's conceived is what we believe. Some people say, well, no, it's when it comes out. That's ridiculous. The baby, when it hits the air, is all of a sudden a baby. No, it's not the way that it works in any facet of life. I read years ago, there was an article about a woman who was running an abortion clinic out of her home, and she wasn't a licensed doctor. And she had 7 babies she aborted, and she got charged with 7 counts of murder. However, you can go across the street to an abortion clinic where there's a doctor doing abortions, and it's legal. So to me, the moral standard is skewed. You have somebody who's not licensed that's doing it, it's murder. You have somebody that is licensed that's doing it, it's not murder. Well, it's either murder or it's not, right? Either way you look at it. Now, to me, it's bigger than just that. It's bigger than just that issue. And I'm using this particular issue because this is a hotbed issue in Christianity and in the conservative and the liberal side. This is the issue. This is one of the main issues of how we vote. I think on the other side, people would say, well, if we give women rights and let them choose, maybe there's more we can do to help the women make a good choice and keep the babies, but give them options instead of just saying no. And so I just think there's a lot you have to really vote based on where is my moral compass. And there'll be people on both sides of it. And there's not always a candidate that I think God leads us through people. I don't think that every person that leads us is what God has. That wouldn't be biblical. God appoints authority, but absolutely there are times where authorities are, God doesn't want us to have, oppression isn't something that God wants. That's a response from evil in different authorities. We see that in different, rulers in the world, but the Bible says, hey, honor your authority. Like God appoints these people. It doesn't mean that he's signing off saying, these are my men and women. I mean, look at King Saul in the Old Testament. God gave him the kingship as a king, but he became prideful, started doing things his own way. And God said, his heart's not near me. He said, I'm going to appoint a new king. But before David came on as the king, the same David who killed Goliath, King Saul, his heart was turned. And God wanted to get him, and God wanted him to see God. God wanted him to submit and to have that change, but he never did. But even when King Saul died, David said, hey, we're going to mourn him because God chose him first. And so I think that there's a million different ways we can go here. There's a million different things you can say, but I would say when it comes to voting and when it comes to things like that, for me, the Bible is my moral compass. It's my moral compass for marriage. It's my moral compass for life. It's my moral compass for death. It's my moral compass for how people should be treated and the character that we should walk in. The Bible is my moral compass. Without that, people can say, well, that's just not right. And I would say, well, if you don't have the Bible, who says it's not? Humanity? That's a great gauge. You know what I mean? Like, that's not why God gave it to us as a gift. So I would say use it as your moral compass. I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I'm going to tell you to use the Bible as your moral compass. Lean into the Lord. Pray. Listen to what he has to say, and he'll tell you. And I'm believing that. So thank you for that question. I want to talk about two things that are bothering me. All right. So y'all get to ask me questions. Let me ask y'all a question. My first question is this. Why do we have to tip everywhere post-COVID? Can you please help me answer this? You have to tip the pizza driver who's already they say, hey, you got a tip on top of paying the driver. So you got a pizza company that says, Domino's is saying, hey, or whatever company it may be, here's your delivery fee of $5, and then tip the driver. You're like, well, that $5 used to be the tip.
Yeah.
But now you're asking me for the delivery fee and the tip. And so I'm saying these big companies, we're paying their people and then we're tipping their people on top of what we're paying them. That's just a question I have. There might be a really good answer out there. My second thing is, how come everywhere we go, you go to get coffee and it says pay 0% tip, 15, 10%, 15, 20%. You can add the gratuity to your coffee bill because somebody got your coffee. Now, I'm grateful for those people that get coffee. I don't think for a minute that because you work as a barista that you don't deserve a tip. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, how come post-COVID, everywhere you go buy shoes at the shoe store. You want to tip them? For what? Don't you get commission? Well, companies start cutting out those things and they want the customers to pay the tips. My thing is, what's got us here? That all of a sudden, I feel awful. Every time I go somewhere and there's somebody behind the counter and they're doing something, they're working, they're getting up like everybody else and they're trying to grind, and I'm just a sucker for it because I'm thinking, well, man, I want to help people, but at some point it's got to stop. It's got to stop. Why are we tipping everybody for everything? I don't get it. I don't know what happened that all of a sudden these companies are like, you know what? And I don't mind adding gratuity to a bill, but let me give you a little bit of a Brandon Shank tip. I know this isn't probably the consensus or consistent, or else this wouldn't be the way it does. A lot of restaurants now are doing 20% gratuity on your bill. And they'll tell you, hey, 20% gratuity is already added. I always give more than 20%. So I know overall you're like, well, like, our waiters and waitresses get more, but not for me. Because I always want to give y'all more, but you want to add it in? And then you say, well, you can add extra tip. Well, you already added my tip. So I'm just saying, like, I get it. Overall, that's not the case. But I have a problem with this, and I would like to know why people are doing it all of a sudden. Is it just people just weren't getting enough paid? Well, the company should pay them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like you're forecasting on the customers to pay the bills that the company should be paying. You know what I mean? I'd rather pay more for a product and not be asked to tip and let that money go to the person than to be asked to tip.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's really awkward. They're sitting there waiting for you to sign, and they know whether or not you can give them a tip.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I'm saying, I love you. I believe in you. Thank you for coming to work. 0%. Like, come on, man. I hate that feeling. So make it stop.
We had an instance where we went. I'm not going to name the place.
Starbucks.
But it's a place with sour cream. And so
Chipotle.
my wife goes in and
it's my guess.
They have the line for the people in the building, and then they have their food line for online orders. And so they tell my wife, we're out of sour cream. And she looks over and she's like, no, you're not. I can see it over there. And she's like, well, that's for the online orders. We can't use that. And I'm like, I drove to your building. I am here in person. You have sour cream, but it's reserved only for the people that order online. So
they're basically trying to push business online because it's cheaper.
Exactly.
Which
It's
interesting. Well, companies are going to do everything they can to make the bottom dollar, and I don't hate you for that. But if I go to get something and they have sour cream, your boy, I like sour cream. That's my jam. So you know what I'm saying? I get it. Hey, we ain't hating you. I just like to know the answers. If you send those in, let me know. I want to know if you work and you're one of those people who are like, man, I'm grateful they did this. Let me know why. Because for me, I understand some people are getting more, but all the customers, that's very awkward for the customer to constantly have to be saying, because I tip all the time, and at some point you're like, man, I just added, every time I go do something, I paid for a $4 item and added, 20% this, but you're thinking nothing's $4 anymore. Give me a break. Coffee's like $6-7,
Yeah.
It's like everything's $10 for a cup of coffee by the time you tip. I mean, it's just like, come on, man. But I'm not complaining. I'm just asking. Make it stop. Help us out. And then my last question is this. What's really fair in youth sports? Coming from a guy who has a baseball travel program with a 10U, 12U. I coach rec sports, coach baseball year round, coach football, 2 city championships back to back. Just saying, VB represent, 2 up, 2 down. What's fair in youth sports? You have these parents come to you. This is. I can tell you this. This very rarely happens to me. Generally because it's laid out in the front. But let me ask you something. Youth sports, everybody says what needs to be fair. What's really fair in youth sports? Is it fair that everybody gets to play and everybody gets a chance, the same amount of chance? Or is it fair that the kids that are really, really good play more than the kids that aren't? What's really fair?
Yeah.
That's life. One of it is mom and dad's controlling the narrative of everybody. Johnny deserves to play just as much. I think the other side is, well, if the kid is really good, why should he be penalized by having to come off the field so other kids get to play? Well, it makes it all fair. They all have to play the same. That's not all fair. There's a kid that's really good. I don't feel like he should be sitting.
Yeah.
So, hey, let us know. What's fair?
Yeah. That's a good one.
It is a good one.
So I think, I don't, there's a lot of different perspectives. I would think, I think we just grew up in the generation too, where it was like, you wanted to work harder to play. Or sometimes we miss that now.
A little bit of entitlement these days.
Yep.
It's never the kids.
No.
Always parents.
No. Yeah.
Well, not always is a big word. I would say sometimes parents. I would say most often.
Mostly.
You don't ever hear kids saying, I want to switch travel ball teams. I hate this team. Only if they're not playing, they've heard their parents complain. Kids switch teams because the parents think Johnny's going to majors, or that they've dropped $3,500 on a team and now their kid's not playing, so they just paid a team $3,500 to sit their kid.
Yeah.
They could have done that for $1,200 over here. I mean, this is the travel ball world. But I think it's interesting because you get in the travel ball world and it's the best you're going to play. It doesn't matter if everybody pays the same amount, you're going to play. But when you get to like these rec leagues, little leagues and stuff, people are like, well, I think it's got to be fair and it's that. And I'm like, well, that's why they bleed talent, because the kids that are really good deserve to play more.
Yeah.
That's life. That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
That's a principle of sports will teach. Work hard, get more playing time. I always tell my kids, you want to play? Prove me wrong. If you're sitting, some of these kids we bring on our teams are developmental. So they're not necessarily ready to play at a high level, but I know they will be. They just need time. So they'll play very limited for weeks, months sometimes, and just watch the game. And they get frustrated. And I love that because I'm like, I want them to get fired up in the dugout to where they're like, I'm ready to play now. I'm sick and tired of sitting here. And every single one of them, when they have that it factor, they get out there and they perform. They start getting better because they've watched the game. It's slowed down for them because they've watched it. They're getting 1 at bat for every 2 games sometimes, but they're watching the game. And then they get to the place where they're so confident and they're so sick of sitting that they come out and they're on fire and they're great and they really start to grow. And so I think there's a principle. I think there's things to teach kids that, I think sometimes youth sports like, oh, all needs to be fair. It's like, well, that's not fair. What's fair in life is that the people who work harder get more.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of life. If you don't think that's right, then plant a garden. Let's both plant gardens, and you'll plant a garden 1 acre and I'll plant a garden 1 foot.
Yeah.
And you work your garden and then I'll work mine. And let's see what comes of it. You're saying, well, I planted a bigger garden. Exactly. You worked harder. You're going to work more. You're going to water more. It's going to invest more. You're going to get more. That's life. And so it does concern me. You know what I mean? Not really. It doesn't concern me because like sometimes that helicopter mentality of a parent, you can't do anything about it. Right. But I know that the kids are willing to work for it. They always come out brighter on the other side. That's one of my favorite things. People ask me, how do you go from coaching all-stars or travel ball to back to like a more of a recreational league? And I say that's where I started. That's where I love it, because there's so many kids that aren't in all-stars or aren't traveling that have the potential to be ballers that just need developed. And I love that as much as I love coaching the kids that are developed, that are moving on to like an elite status. I love that. I love that as much as anything. So, but what's fair in youth sports? Let us know. Email us, info Palm Church Online, admin at Palm Church Online, or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. Let us know. All right, so in the news, I got a couple things I want to talk about. The first is this. There was a CDC study that just got done. It said teens are experiencing record levels of sadness and violence, according to the CDC's recently released Youth Risk Behavior Survey. Among the findings, 57% of teenage girls in 2021 report feeling persistently sad or hopeless, and it's up from 36% in 2011. 36% is a lot. Now, granted, you have COVID and all that, but I think all COVID did was expose where we're actually at. It just made people vulnerable. So 29% of teen boys feel persistently sad or hopeless, up from 21% a decade ago. 30% of teenage girls have seriously considered suicide, up from 19% in 2011. And 58% of teens with same-sex partners have seriously considered ending their life. These numbers are unprecedented, and while tragic, they also underline the importance of the mission of hope that the church brings. Like, this is we've got to find ways to reach these kids. We've got to find ways to infiltrate the community, being a part, coaching, pouring into them, whatever that may be. For me, that's how I answer it. I got kids that are little. It's easier for me because they're already in those teams, so I can go in and be a part of them. I understand for some people that may not have that. They've got to figure out ways to be a part of the community. But being unpopular now is so much harder than it was when we were kids. Because when we were kids, you go home, nobody's calling your house phone, nobody's messing with you, and the drama picks up the next day where it left off. Well, now the kids go home and they're getting berated and barraged and uppercut on social, and they're getting hate mail and texts. I mean, it never stops. Yeah, and it worries me. It worries me for my boys because everybody's going to experience to a degree. And the amount of stress, I wonder when they're 70 what their life's going to look like. And according to this survey, there's not a lot. There's a vast percentage of them that aren't making it until they're 70. And that's terrifying. Yeah. And I think the bigger thing is, well, I read another article that said, this is what you look for. Because I was like, well, how do you fix this? And it said, well, how do we know the most unexpected sign that someone's having suicidal thoughts? And it said the most unexpected thing, or the most unexpected sign that someone is actually considering suicide is that they're happy and carefree.
Wow.
So they were formerly down, depressed, and all of a sudden, man, they're coming out of it. Like, the clouds are lifting, the sky's turning blue, the sun is bright, and they're saying that when people make a decision that they're going to take their life, a lot of times that reasoning, if someone's who's suicidal made the decision to take their life, they may start to feel happy, and the idea that they won't be in pain much longer, and the fact that they can stop debating that decision with themselves, and at this point, dying is the only answer.
Yeah.
And so if you know somebody who is down or depressed or has been struggling for a long time, and all of a sudden they seem to just pop out of it, talk to them. Make sure they're getting real help, real psychological help. Because I am, Caden's in 6th grade this year, and it's different, man. 6th grade, all of us in middle school try to find ourselves, and this is the greatest age identification, finding who I am, time of your life when you're 12 and 13. Every kid in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Middle school's tough for all of us, right? You're finding yourself, your body's changing. Like, there's just a lot. And when I read this statistic, man, it breaks my heart. It's just because there's so many kids that they need the hope of the world. They need Jesus. They need the church. They need community. They need people to tell them who God's created them to be and help them get there and walk with them and encourage them and love them and let them know, man, that, you're not alone. But if y'all know somebody who's walking through this and all of a sudden they just seem like they popped out of it, that's a heads up.
Yeah, wow.
The big indicator. The second article I read that I wanted to share with you is by Mary Forrest, who is a wife to NBC's Richard Engel. And she writes about saying goodbye to her son's physical body. Now, before I go into this, I'm going to tell you, it was really weird. When I read this, I was like, this is weird. Until I started, I'll go there. But the whole article is about this boy who died, I believe he was 7. And his name was Rhett. His name wasn't Rhett. His name was Henry. He passed away by complications from Rett syndrome.
Okay.
So Henry is 7 years old, and he fought this syndrome for 7 years. Beautiful little boy, adorable. And she talks about how he had this beautiful hair, and it was always just the most, beautiful head of hair and all this. And she writes this article about saying goodbye to her son's body, and she talks about the day that he passed away. He was in the house, and she calls for the funeral home to come get him, and it was a couple hours till they got there. And when they had gotten there, she said it was summer, it was sunny out, and so she changed his clothes and put clothes on him that were comfortable, that were summer. The boy has passed away at this point.
Yeah.
She carries the boy's body to the car. The last time she noticed she would hold him. And as I'm reading it, I'm just thinking, it's beautiful outside. It feels like summer. The breeze is blowing, the music could be on, and your little boy is laying there looking like he's asleep, but he's gone. He's gone. Like, there's just something so real in that picture for me that I've really had trouble getting on my mind. Because I think we feel like death is so far and that the world would change, but grief is what makes the world change, but death, it's not far. And the difference in that day was the fact that her little boy was laying there, but there was no life in his body. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so she goes on to talk about after the earthquakes in Turkey, there was a picture of a dad sitting beside rubble. And the picture of the dad sitting beside rubble, inside the rubble was his daughter who was deceased. And he was sitting there with her, essentially, waiting to get her out. And she said this stirred things in her where she sat with him as he died, and awaiting cremation. It was going to be a week. And so every day during that week, she would go to the funeral home and spend time with his body.
Wow.
And she said she would bring books and she would bring toys. And as she sat by her son's body, she would squeeze the toys to hear the sounds that would remind her of when he played with them.
Jeez.
And she said she would sit there and she would run her hands through his beautiful hair. And when I read this, I was thinking, this is getting really weird.
Yeah.
And for a whole week, she did this. She talked about how she would, sometimes leave and come back. But every day she would wake up and go visit his body. And she talked about on the last day when he was cremated, just the sense of loss and knowing that she'll never see his little body like that again. And she talks about this one moment where his nose was running. And she says she understands his body fluids. It's been a couple of days. And she wiped it with a tissue. And she says she still keeps that tissue. She said because it's just something that was him. And I thought that was extreme. But when I finished this article and I tried to empathize with this woman, my heart broke for her. And I don't think any of it's weird.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine losing a kid.
No.
And so as I listened to her story, I can't imagine sitting beside my son and reading a book that he used to love or squeezing a toy that sound I heard in my house when he was playing with it. And I'm looking and his lifeless body's there, but still his body. Like it's like a process in grief.
Yeah.
And I've heard people doing things like this before with people in hospitals or, in their homes that have passed and kind of spending time with the body. And a while ago, it used to really creep me out. It used to really it was weird. Now I don't feel like it's weird. I feel like grief is really, really, really hard. And I love this. One of my favorite scriptures is how it tells us that the Lord draws near to the brokenhearted, because he knows those are vulnerable moments. Those are humbled moments where we don't have power or control. And we would do anything to get that life back. And God just comes right in there and he sits with us and he holds us. If you've been through grief in your life, sometimes grief is the most peaceful time. And you're thinking, how is it so peaceful? Because God gives us our strength. He's with us. Doesn't mean you're going to have to go through the grieving process. You're going to have to go through the pain. You're going to have to go through the torment of what it means to lose somebody. And I don't mean torment in a way of you're in a night sweat and you can't breathe and you're losing your mind. And sometimes those things can be realistic. But I'm meaning it in a way of grief isn't a normal thing for us to have to process. It's a byproduct of sin in all of our lives. Like the Bible says we've all sinned and fallen short. And it also talks about, the weight of our humanity is that we're all going to die. So grief was never something that God intended for us to have to experience, but it's the reality of sin in our life. And so it's an unnatural thing that we have to endure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I sit with this article and my heart goes out for anybody who's lost a child, for anybody who's had to grieve like this, for anybody who's been overwhelmed. I've done a lot of funerals. I've done funerals for babies. I've done funerals for youth. I've done funerals for, grandmas and grandpas that are passing into eternity. I've done funerals in tragedies. I've done funerals for drug overdoses. I've done all of them. I've done a wide variety, and I can tell you that death is the same in every one. It's permanent. And it always leaves us asking more questions than we're given answers to. But we're not wired to have to deal with death.
Yeah.
That wasn't God's intention. And that grief in our life, it's a real thing, and I don't think you learn how to live without him. You just learn how to live with that grief.
Yeah.
I mean, you've lost your dad at a young age, and it's very different.
Yeah, one of the, I learned this from my brother-in-law who actually lost his dad too, where it's just a new normal. Like it's the best way that I felt someone describe it. And I'm still walking through it. But yeah, it's not, you don't ever return to before their death. It just becomes a new normal. Yeah, you learn how to manage. You learn how to keep moving forward. And it does make you stronger. But yeah, it's that pain is kind of always with you. It just kind of never goes away.
Yeah, I can't tell you the amount of times I've stood in rooms with families and they look at you like, say something that's going to fix this.
Yeah.
And those are the moments where I know the Holy Spirit is the only one that fixes these moments. He's the only one that brings peace. There's no fixing death. You don't fix it. You don't. And I think for those of you that are out there and you're struggling with a loss, draw near to the Lord. And you say, what does that mean? Talk to him.
Yeah.
Say, God, I need your help. I need you to help me in this loss. I need you to help me in this tragedy. For some of us, it's just shame and guilt and sin. And the loss, the grief of death is the same way we feel a lot of times about situations in our life we can't control, if we're being honest, or a spouse that has left, or a tragedy that struck in our life that might not even directly involve us. There's those same feelings of grief and brokenness kind of reverberate through different things. Now, some people would say there's nothing like losing a child. It's different. I get that. There isn't. You know, you would say there's nothing like losing a parent. You know, other people would say there's nothing like losing a spouse. I get all that.
Yeah.
I can empathize to a degree, but I've never been there, and so I won't try to understand it. But what I do know is that the Lord promises to draw near to the brokenhearted, to draw near in those times of grief, and He's faithful in it. You know. Yeah. So I have a final thought. And the final thought is we are in a community here in Virginia Beach where 35% of this community is military. It's current and former military. I think Virginia Beach, the Tidewater area, is the largest area of retired veterans in the United States. So I'm so grateful to live here. I'm so grateful for all the people that have paid a dear price. And, you know, pastoring a church where more than half our church is current or former military, the families pay a price as much as the people that are serving. But Chief Special Warfare Operator Michael Ernst died on February 19th following a free fall accident in Arizona. You know, he was a Navy SEAL, and this community is very near and dear to us. You know, we are very connected to a lot of Navy SEALs in this community. In fact, you can't live in Virginia Beach and not be connected with some of these amazing Navy SEAL families, because you coach their kids are in your schools, they go to your church, and you just realize the sacrifice, but how much they are willing to risk it all, knowing very little, meaning, hey, we're going out on this, not knowing if we're ever coming home, you know. And I know that any military member going on deployment feels that way, but this community is very near and dear to us. And I just want to take a moment and extend our sincere condolences to the families, to all military, but to the Navy SEAL community. You know, these are losses that are close, because Virginia Beach is a home to a lot of these families and to an incredible military community. So we love you. We're grateful for you. We're praying for you, and we're believing with you that God's going to bring strength and peace and healing in this time. And we know that He's the only one who can, and He will, if we just lean into Him. Let me pray over you. Well, Lord, I just thank you so much for each and every listener. I thank you so much for each and every family, each and every person. God, I just pray today they would sense your presence, and they would know that you're not disappointed, you're not upset, you're not mad, you're not angry, but God, you see them, you love them, your hand is on them, and you'll never leave them or forsake them. We love you. We praise you, and everybody said amen. Love y'all. Hey, we'll see you next week. Palms Church, Sunday. See y'all then. Love you guys.